It was the 4th of July, and Derek was finally getting to enjoy the property he'd worked so hard to buy. 2 years ago, when he first saw the listing for this lakefront home, he couldn't believe his luck. 8 acres of land with actual waterfront access. Not just a view of the water, but real, direct access with a dock and a small private beach. The price was higher than he wanted to pay, but his wife kept telling him they'd never find something like this again. She was right. Today was supposed to be special. Just a small gathering with family and close friends. Nothing crazy. About 15 people total. His daughter had just turned 16 the week before, and she'd begged him to do a lakeside party instead of the usual backyard barbecue. How could he say no? The weather was perfect. Blue skies, just enough breeze to keep things comfortable, and the lake was calm and beautiful. By 2 in the afternoon, everything was going exactly as planned. His brother and a couple of cousins had brought their kayaks, and they were taking turns paddling around the cove. A few of the younger kids were splashing in the shallow water near the shore, their laughter carrying up to where Derek was manning the grill. His mother had claimed the best beach chair and was sitting under a big umbrella, feet up, looking more relaxed than he'd seen her in months. She'd been having trouble with her hip, needed a walker to get around these days, but she'd made the trip down the slope from the house without too much trouble. His wife was down by the water's edge, taking pictures of their daughter and her friends. They were all posing on the dock, trying to get the perfect shot with the lake in the background. Normal teenager stuff. The kind of day that makes you feel like all the mortgage payments and long work hours are actually worth something. Derek had just finished flipping a round of burgers when he noticed something odd. A woman was walking along the shoreline from the direction of the neighborhood next door, the HOA community. He'd known when he bought the place that there was a homeowners association right next to his property, but it had never been an issue. His land was separate, completely independent. Different owner, different deed, different everything. The woman was moving with purpose. She had on one of those visors that serious walkers wear, and she was carrying a clipboard at the beach. That should have been his first warning sign. She marched right past his property markers, didn't even glance at them, and headed straight for his guests on the beach. Derek watched from up by the house, not quite sure what was happening. Then he heard her voice. Loud, authoritative, the kind of voice that's used to people listening. "Excuse me, everyone, I need your attention, please." His cousin Lisa, who'd been helping the kids build a sandcastle, looked up confused. The woman with the clipboard didn't wait for acknowledgement. "This is community property, and I'm going to need everyone to pack up your things. You're in violation of HOA regulations regarding guest limits on the lake." Derek felt his stomach drop. What was she talking about? He started walking down toward the beach, but he was a good 50 yards away, and the slope made it slow going. Lisa tried to respond. "Oh, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're private guests. This is my cousin's property." The woman actually laughed. Not a friendly laugh either. It was dismissive, almost mocking. "Ma'am, I've been on the HOA board for 12 years. I know every single inch of what is and isn't community property. This lakefront area is shared space, and there are clear rules about how many guests can use it at one time. You're well over the limit." Derek's mother had struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on her walker. She looked upset, confused. His daughter and her friends had stopped posing for pictures and were staring at the scene unfolding on the beach. "We're not trying to cause any problems," Lisa said, her voice much calmer than Derek would have managed. "But like I said, this is private property. My cousin Derek owns this land." "That's impossible," the woman snapped. She flipped through papers on her clipboard like she was looking for evidence. "The HOA owns all lakefront property in this area. It's clearly marked on all community maps. If your cousin told you this was private, he was either mistaken or deliberately misleading you." Derek was close enough now to see his mother's face. She looked like she might cry. His mother, who'd raised 3 kids mostly on her own, who'd worked 2 jobs to keep them fed, who never let anyone push her around. This stranger with a clipboard was making her feel like she'd done something wrong. Some of the other guests had started quietly gathering their things. Nobody wants to be part of a confrontation. Nobody wants to be the reason someone else gets in trouble, even if they haven't done anything wrong. Derek saw his daughter's best friend whispering to her, probably saying they should just go. The woman pulled out her phone. "I'm going to have to call security, and if you refuse to leave, I'll call the police for trespassing. This isn't negotiable." That's when Derek finally reached the group. He recognized her the moment he got close enough to see her face clearly. Patricia something. He'd never actually spoken to her, but he'd definitely seen her before. About 6 months ago, she'd left a nasty note on his windshield. He'd parked on the public street near the entrance to the HOA community because he'd been meeting a friend for a walk around the neighborhood trail. The note had been taped to his driver's side window, written in angry capital letters about how his truck was too close to the community entrance and creating a safety hazard. He'd been legally parked on a public street at least 10 feet from the actual driveway. He'd thrown the note away and forgot about it. Clearly, she hadn't forgotten about him. "Excuse me," Derek said, trying to keep his voice level. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Derek. I own this property." Patricia turned to him and her expression shifted into something between annoyance and satisfaction, like she'd been waiting for the property owner to show up so she could really lay down the law. "Then you should know better than to violate community standards like this," she said. "Your excessive gathering is disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of the lake for actual HOA residents. I have the authority to enforce lake usage rules, and right now, you're in violation of at least 3 different bylaws." Derek tried to interrupt. "Ma'am, I think if you just let me explain." But Patricia was on a roll. She started rattling off rules, guest limits, noise ordinances, watercraft restrictions. She was particularly worked up about the 3 kayaks pulled up on the shore. According to her, they were blocking community access to the water. "If you'd bothered to read the community guidelines," she continued, her voice getting louder, "you'd know that this kind of behavior is exactly what we're trying to prevent. The lake is a shared resource, and people like you seem to think you can just take over whenever you want." Derek's wife had walked up from the dock. She put a hand on his arm, a gentle warning to stay calm. His daughter was watching from a distance, her face red with embarrassment. Her perfect birthday celebration was turning into a public spectacle. By now, a few people from the HOA community had gathered at the property line. Some were clearly just curious. Others seemed to be enjoying the drama. One guy was actually filming on his phone. Derek tried again. "Ma'am, please, if you'd just listen for a second." "I've heard enough excuses," Patricia cut him off. "You have 15 minutes to clear everyone out, or I'm making those calls. Security first, then police. This is your only warning." His mother had sat back down in her beach chair. She looked exhausted and upset. Lisa was already helping the kids gather their sand toys. The whole day was falling apart, and Derek hadn't even been able to get a word in edgewise to explain the truth. Patricia stood there, phone in hand, clipboard under her arm, looking absolutely certain of her authority and her righteousness. She was defending the community. She was enforcing the rules. She was doing the right thing. She had absolutely no idea she was standing on someone else's private property. Derek took a deep breath. He'd dealt with difficult people before. In his line of work as a software engineer, he'd sat through countless meetings with clients who thought they knew better than the people they'd hired. He'd learned that staying calm was always the better option. "Getting angry just made things worse, ma'am," he said, his voice steady. "I really need you to listen to me for just a minute. This isn't HOA property. This is my private land." Patricia actually laughed. A real, genuine laugh, like he'd just told her the funniest joke she'd heard all day. She shook her head, still smiling, that condescending smile that made Derek's jaw tighten. "That's impossible," she said flatly. "I've been on the HOA board for over a decade. I've reviewed the community maps dozens of times. The HOA owns all lakefront property in this development. All of it. That's one of the main selling points for people who buy here. Lake access." "I understand why you'd think that," Derek tried to keep his tone reasonable. "But this particular section—" "There is no particular section," Patricia interrupted, her smile fading into irritation. "Look, I don't know what you think you know, but facts are facts. This is community property. You might live nearby, and maybe you've gotten away with using it before, but that doesn't make it yours. Today you've crossed a line. This many people, this much equipment, completely taking over the beach. Other residents have been calling me all afternoon complaining. Derek doubted that last part. He hadn't seen any other HOA residents trying to use this stretch of beach all day, but he let it go. Can I show you something? Derek pulled out his phone. I have documentation. Documentation? Patricia's voice pitched higher. Of what? I have documentation too. Official HOA maps, recorded plats, the original development plans. I've seen all of it. Multiple times. There's no private lakefront property carved out of this development. It doesn't exist. One of the HOA residents who'd been watching from the property line called out, Patricia, maybe you should at least look at what he's got. Patricia shot him a look that could have frozen the lake solid. Jerry, I've got this under control. I don't need help from the peanut gallery. Jerry held up his hands and took a step back. Derek made a mental note. At least one person over there seemed reasonable. Maybe they weren't all like Patricia. Derek's brother walked up from where he'd been gathering the kayaks. Hey man, you want me to call someone? Your real estate lawyer, maybe? Patricia seized on that. Oh, so now we need lawyers? That's what happens when people know they're in the wrong. They start making threats about lawyers. Nobody's threatening anything, Derek said, feeling his patience starting to crack. I'm trying to show you proof that you're mistaken. I am not mistaken. Patricia's face was getting red now. What I am is tired of people thinking the rules don't apply to them. You know what your problem is? You moved in here, next to our nice community, and you thought you could just do whatever you wanted. Use our lake, crowd our beach, ignore our standards. Well, not today. Derek's wife squeezed his arm harder. He could feel her tension. His daughter had actually started crying, trying to hide it from her friends. The whole thing was spiraling into something ridiculous. The rules don't apply to me, Derek said slowly. Because I'm not part of your HOA, this isn't your property. Show me the deed then, Patricia challenged. Right now. Prove it. Okay. Derek started scrolling through his phone. He kept important documents in a cloud folder, specifically for situations like this. Well, not exactly like this. He'd never imagined this specific scenario. But he'd learned to keep property documents accessible after some confusion during his home insurance renewal last year. He found the survey map first, the one from when he'd bought the property. He zoomed in on the relevant section and held out his phone. Patricia snatched it from his hand before he could even offer. She stared at the screen, her lips pressed into a thin line. Derek watched her eyes scanning the document. He could see the exact moment she realized what she was looking at. Her face went from flushed red to pale white in about 3 seconds. This could be fake, she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. It's not fake. That's from the county surveyor. It's part of my official property records. Derek took his phone back. When this development was built back in 1987, there was an issue with the original landowner. This strip of lakefront, about 400 feet of it, was kept separate. It was sold as a private lot with its own lake access rights. That's why it cost so much when I bought it. Patricia was staring at the property line markers now, the ones she'd walked right past. They were small, easy to miss if you weren't looking. Just metal stakes with orange caps. But they were there. They'd always been there. I want to see the actual deed, she said, and title insurance. And I want to see the survey stakes. Fine. Derek had reached his limit with being polite. We can walk the entire property line right now if you want. Every marker is exactly where it should be. But I'll tell you something else. I've been pretty understanding about HOA residents wandering onto my beach over the last 2 years. I've seen people fishing off my dock. I've seen families having picnics on my sand. I never said anything because I figured, what's the harm? It's a big beach. I wasn't using it all the time. Why make a big deal about it? Patricia's mouth opened like she was going to say something, but nothing came out. But this, Derek gestured at his family, at his crying daughter, at his exhausted mother still sitting in her beach chair. This is crossing a line. You came onto my property. You harassed my guests. You threatened to call the police on people who were doing absolutely nothing wrong. You ruined my daughter's birthday party. And you didn't even have the basic courtesy to check if you were right before you started throwing your weight around. More HOA residents had gathered now, maybe 8 or 10 of them all watching the drama unfold. Derek heard someone whisper, "Is that the Patterson lot? The one with the separate deed?" An older man, maybe in his 70s, stepped closer. "Wait, are you talking about the private parcel? The one old man Henderson refused to sell?" Derek turned to him. "You know about it?" "Sure," the old man said. I've lived here since this place was built. There was a big stink about it during development. Henderson owned all this land originally. The developer wanted to buy it all, but Henderson refused to sell the lakefront piece where his grandfather's cabin had been. Said it had sentimental value. They finally agreed to let him keep this strip and develop the rest. Then Henderson sold it privately a few years later when he moved to Florida. I'd forgotten all about it until just now. Patricia looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. Her clipboard hung loose at her side. The phone she'd been so ready to use for emergency calls was still clutched in her hand, but her knuckles had gone white. This is still a misunderstanding, she tried. The community maps don't show any private property here. How was I supposed to know? The property markers are clearly visible, Derek said. And maybe before you threaten people with police and security, you could try asking questions first. Or checking records. Or literally anything besides assuming you're automatically right. I was trying to maintain community standards. Patricia's voice had shifted. She wasn't apologizing exactly. She was defending herself. How was I supposed to know you owned some special lot that nobody talks about? You should have posted signs. Big signs. This is partially your fault for not making it clear. Derek couldn't believe what he was hearing. My fault? If you'd properly marked your property, this wouldn't have happened, Patricia insisted. An honest mistake. That's all this was. An honest mistake that could have been prevented if you'd been more responsible about signage. She wasn't sorry, not even a little bit. She was embarrassed, sure, humiliated even, standing there in front of her neighbors after being proven completely wrong. But sorry? No, Derek's wife, who'd been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. We'd like you to leave our property now. Patricia's face went red again. Fine. But don't expect any favors from the HOA. You want to be separate? You can be separate. Don't come crying to us when you need something. We won't, Derek said coldly. Patricia turned and marched back toward the HOA community, her visor slightly askew, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. Some of the gathered residents parted to let her through. Others didn't, making her walk around them. Derek heard a few people calling out apologies as they dispersed. The old man who'd remembered the Henderson property gave him a little wave before heading back. Jerry, the guy who'd suggested Patricia listen to Derek earlier, lingered. Hey man, I'm really sorry about all that. Patricia gets intense sometimes. About HOA stuff, takes it real personal. Yeah, well, she just took it personal all over my daughter's birthday party, Derek said. Jerry winced. Yeah, that's rough. For what it's worth, not all of us are like that. Most of us just want to enjoy the lake and leave people alone. I appreciate that, Derek said, meaning it. Jerry seemed decent enough. After Jerry left, Derek turned back to his family and friends. His mother was still sitting in her chair, but she looked better, less shaken. His daughter had stopped crying, though her friends were huddled around her, probably trying to make her feel better about the whole scene. So, his brother said, breaking the silence, we still... Derek's bad feeling turned out to be absolutely correct. Patricia hadn't let it go. Not even close. If anything, being proven wrong had just made her more determined to find something. Anything that Derek was actually doing wrong. The first letter arrived 4 days after the 4th of July incident. It came from the HOA's attorney. Official letterhead, formal language, the whole 9 yards. Derek opened it at the kitchen table while his wife made coffee. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. What is it? His wife leaned over his shoulder to read. The letter claimed that Derek's dock was in violation of county regulations. According to the HOA's investigation, the dock extended too far into the lake and was creating a navigation hazard for boaters. The letter demanded that Derek provide proof of proper permitting within 10 business days or face potential legal action. They can't be serious, his wife said. That dock was here when we bought the place. It's been here for like 30 years. They're serious. Derek was already pulling up the number for his real estate attorney. This is Patricia, has to be. She's trying to find something to nail me on. His lawyer, a straightforward guy named Bill, listened to the situation and laughed. Not a mean laugh, but the kind of laugh you give when someone's being ridiculous. Send me the letter, Bill said. I'll respond. Your dock is grandfathered in, fully permitted and documented in your title search. This is harassment, plain and simple. They know they messed up and now they're trying to save face. Bill's response was swift and professional. Within 3 days, The HOA received a letter explaining in detail exactly why their claims were baseless. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, Derek got a call from the county planning department. Someone had filed a complaint about unpermitted structures on his property. The county had to investigate all complaints. Could an inspector come out next Thursday? Derek took the day off work. The inspector, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, walked the entire property with Derek. She checked the dock, the small storage shed near the beach, even the gazebo up by the house. "Everything's in order," she told him, signing off on her tablet. Whoever filed this complaint either had bad information or was just wasting everyone's time. "Your permits are all current and properly filed. Can I ask who filed it?" Derek knew the answer, but he wanted confirmation. The inspector checked her notes. A Patricia Henderson. She listed herself as a concerned neighbor and HOA board member. Henderson. So that was her last name. Derek filed that information away. "For the record, she's not my neighbor. She lives in the HOA community next door, and I'm not part of that HOA. The inspector raised an eyebrow. "Then she really doesn't have any standing to file complaints about your property." "That's good to know. I'll make a note in the file. If she files any more frivolous complaints, we might have to have a conversation with her about abusing the system." The complaints didn't stop, though. Over the next week, Derek received a notice from the health department. Someone had reported that his July 4th party had involved improper waste disposal and possible contamination of the lake. A health inspector came out, found absolutely nothing wrong, and left looking annoyed at having his time wasted. Then the fire department showed up. Someone had reported that Derek was having illegal bonfires on the beach that violated county burn ordinances. Derek hadn't had a bonfire in over a year. The fire marshal confirmed there was no evidence of any recent fires and added his report to what was becoming a very thick file of false complaints. "This is insane," Derek told his wife one evening. They were sitting on their deck, looking out at the lake. The view that had once made him feel peaceful now just reminded him of all the hassle. "She's calling in fake complaints to every county department she can think of. Can't we do something?" His wife was frustrated too. "This is harassment." "Bill says we're documenting everything," Derek said. "Every false complaint, every wasted inspection, all of it. If it continues, we'll have grounds for a harassment claim. But right now, we just have to let it play out." What really pushed things over the edge happened 2 weeks after the original incident. Derek was at work when his wife called, her voice tight with anger. "You need to come home now." Derek made it home in 20 minutes, probably breaking a few speed limits on the way. When he pulled into the driveway, he saw what his wife was talking about. There was a fence. A brand new wooden fence, 6 feet tall, running along what Patricia apparently believed was the property line between his land and the HOA community. Except it wasn't on the property line. It was 15 feet onto Derek's property. It completely blocked the walking path he used to get from his house down to the beach. His wife was standing next to it, arms crossed. "They put it up this morning. A whole crew came out. I tried to tell them they were on our property, but they said they were just following the survey map the HOA provided. They wouldn't listen to me." Derek walked the length of the fence. It was professionally done, he'd give them that. Nice cedar posts, solid construction. It must have cost a few $1,000s at least. And it was very clearly, very definitely on his land. He pulled out his phone and called Bill. "They did what?" Bill sounded genuinely shocked. "That's not just harassment anymore. That's property encroachment. That's legally actionable. Don't touch the fence. Don't do anything to it. I'm going to send a surveyor out today to document everything. Then we're going to send the HOA a letter they won't be able to ignore." The surveyor came out that afternoon. He was the same guy who'd done Derek's original property survey when he bought the place. He took measurements, photos, and GPS coordinates. His conclusion was exactly what Derek already knew. The fence was 15 feet onto Derek's property. Bill's letter to the HOA was not polite. It was not friendly. It was the kind of letter that says, "You have really messed up and there will be consequences." It demanded immediate removal of the fence, reimbursement for surveyor costs, and a written apology. It also strongly suggested that if this pattern of harassment continued, Derek would pursue legal action not just against the HOA, but against individual board members personally. That letter apparently caused some chaos in the HOA. Derek heard about it from Jerry, the reasonable neighbor who'd tried to intervene during the original beach incident. Jerry showed up at Derek's door 2 days after the letter was delivered. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Jerry looked uncomfortable. They sat on Derek's deck. Jerry pulled out his phone and showed Derek something. It was the HOA community message board, an online forum where residents posted about neighborhood issues. "This blew up yesterday," Jerry said. "After your lawyer's letter came. A bunch of us had no idea Patricia was doing any of this stuff. The fence, the complaints, none of it was approved by the full board. Patricia apparently convinced 2 other board members that you were some kind of problem neighbor who needed to be dealt with. They authorized the fence without really looking into it." Derek scrolled through the messages. Residents were angry. Not at Derek, at Patricia. Several people were demanding an emergency board meeting. Others were calling for Patricia to be removed from her position. A few people had posted their own stories about Patricia's behavior over the years. Apparently, Derek wasn't the first person she'd targeted. "There's a meeting tomorrow night," Jerry said. "Emergency session. The reasonable board members, the ones who weren't part of this mess, they're pushing for accountability. I wanted you to know. I think this is going to get resolved, finally." The meeting happened, though Derek wasn't there. He heard about it afterward from Jerry and a few other neighbors who stopped by to apologize. It had been, by all accounts, pretty brutal. Several homeowners had shown up specifically to speak against Patricia. The evidence of her harassment campaign had been presented. The costs of the frivolous fence installation had been laid out. The vote to remove Patricia from the board was apparently unanimous among the members who weren't her close allies. Those allies resigned rather than face their own removal. The HOA president, who'd been largely absent during all of this, was also pushed out. New leadership was voted in on an interim basis. The fence came down 3 days later. Same crew that had put it up. They looked embarrassed, working quickly and quietly. The HOA sent Derek a check for the surveyor costs, along with a formal letter of apology signed by the new interim board president. Derek thought that would be the end of it. The harassment would stop. Patricia would slink away, embarrassed and defeated. They could all move on, but he'd underestimated just how vindictive someone could be when they felt wronged. Patricia might have lost her position on the board, but that didn't mean she was done. If anything, losing her position just made her angrier. She'd been humiliated twice now, first on the beach, then at the board meeting. People in the HOA community were talking about her, judging her. Some were even avoiding her. And in Patricia's mind, it was all Derek's fault. His wife noticed it first. She'd gone down to the beach early one morning, planning to have her coffee on the dock and watch the sunrise. She came back to the house earlier than expected, her face pale. "Someone was down there," she told Derek, "on our beach, at like 6 in the morning. I saw them from the path, but by the time I got down there, they were gone." But Derek Arkaya. The 60 days before Patricia's forced move were tense ones. Derek kept checking the security camera feeds, half expecting more incidents. His wife had started feeling anxious about going down to the beach alone. Their daughter, who'd spent the whole summer before last practically living on that dock, now mostly stayed up at the house. The whole thing had stolen something from them. The peace they'd bought this property for had been replaced with vigilance and worry. Patricia herself had gone quiet. Too quiet. Derek would occasionally see her from a distance, walking near the property line, sometimes just standing there staring at his beach. It was unsettling. Jerry mentioned that she'd stopped coming to HOA community events, stopped posting on the message board. She'd basically become a ghost in her own neighborhood, present but not really there. "People feel bad for her now," Jerry told Derek one afternoon. They'd started having regular conversations, and Derek had come to think of Jerry as an actual friend. "Some folks are saying we were too hard on her. That everyone makes mistakes. You know how it is. Time passes, people forget how bad things actually were." Derek understood. It was human nature. The immediate anger fades, and people start remembering the good times instead of the bad. Patricia had been on the HOA board for 12 years. She'd organized community events. She'd been, by most accounts, pretty dedicated to the neighborhood. Until she wasn't. Until she'd let her need to be right override everything else. "Let them feel bad," Derek said. "As long as she leaves me alone, she can have all the sympathy she wants." But Patricia wasn't quite done yet. 2 weeks before her moving date, Derek's lawyer Bill called with concerning news. "I got a letter from an attorney representing Patricia," Bill said. "She's threatening to sue you." Derek actually laughed. He couldn't help it. "Sue me? For what?" Defamation and emotional distress, apparently. She's claiming that by sharing the security footage of her on your property, you damaged her reputation and caused her to lose her housing. She's demanding $50,000. The laughter died in Derek's throat. Are you serious? She trespassed on my property. She vandalized it. I have video proof. I know that, and any judge will know that, Bill said calmly. This is a nuisance suit. It's designed to harass you, cost you money, and make your life difficult. It won't go anywhere, but you'll need to respond to it officially, which means you'll need to pay me to draft a response. That's what she's counting on. Even if she loses, she's cost you time and money. Can't we countersue for harassment? We can, and we will if she actually files this thing. My guess she won't. This is just a threat. One last attempt to feel like she has some power in this situation. I'll draft a response that makes it very clear that if she proceeds, we'll not only countersue for harassment, but we'll also pursue the criminal trespassing and vandalism charges you've been holding off on. That should shut this down. Bill was right. After his response letter, Patricia's attorney went quiet. No lawsuit was filed, but it had cost Derek another $1,200 in legal fees just to respond to a threat that was never going to go anywhere. It was exhausting. Death by 1,000 cuts. That's what this had become. The cameras caught Patricia one more time before she moved out. It was late at night, nearly midnight on a Tuesday. Derek's phone buzzed with a motion alert. He pulled up the camera feed, expecting to see a raccoon or a deer. Instead, he saw Patricia standing at the edge of his property, right at the line where her rental ended and his land began. She wasn't doing anything, just standing there in the dark looking out at the lake. At his lake, his private stretch of water that she'd been so convinced belonged to the community. Derek watched her for almost 10 minutes. She didn't move, didn't do anything threatening. She just stood there. And even through the camera feed, even in the dark, Derek could see something in her posture that looked like defeat. He almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then he remembered his daughter crying at her birthday party. His mother's confused, hurt expression, the slashed kayak, the mountains of legal fees, the stress his wife had been under. No, he didn't feel sorry for Patricia, but he did feel something like pity. She'd burned down her own life over nothing, over being wrong about a property line. When she finally walked away from the property line that night, Derek felt a small sense of relief. Maybe this really was almost over. The day Patricia moved out, Derek wasn't home. He'd deliberately scheduled a work trip to avoid being around for it. His wife texted him updates throughout the day. Moving truck arrived at 9. Patricia supervised but didn't help with the heavy lifting. Movers seemed professional and quick. By 4 in the afternoon, it was done. The house was empty. Where did she go? Derek texted back. Nobody knows. Jerry asked around. She didn't tell anyone where she was moving to. Just gone. Good, Derek thought. Clean break. Fresh start for everyone. The new interim HOA president, a level-headed accountant named Tom, reached out to Derek a week later. He asked if Derek would be willing to meet with him and a couple of other board members. No lawyers, no formal anything. Just a conversation. Derek agreed, though he brought Bill anyway. Not to the meeting itself, but Bill waited in his car just in case things went sideways. They met at a coffee shop halfway between Derek's house and the HOA community. Tom was straightforward and genuine. I want to apologize officially and personally for everything that happened. Patricia acted without proper authority on multiple occasions. The board failed in its oversight responsibilities. You had every right to pursue criminal charges and significant civil damages. The fact that you didn't shows a level of restraint and grace that, frankly, we didn't earn. Derek appreciated the directness. I just wanted it to be over. Still do. It is over, Tom assured him. We've implemented new procedures for board decisions. No single board member can authorize actions like the fence installation without full board approval and proper verification. We've also made it clear in our community guidelines that your property is private and off-limits. We put up respectful signs at the property boundaries explaining the situation. That surprised Derek. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did. Part of what enabled Patricia's behavior was that a lot of residents genuinely didn't know about your private parcel. They'd lived here for years, thinking the whole lakefront was community property. We needed to educate people. The signs are small, professional, just informative. Private property beyond this point, with a brief explanation. We ran the design by your lawyer first. Derek hadn't heard about that from Bill. but it sounded like something Bill would approve without bothering Derek about. Okay, that's good. Thank you. There's one more thing, Tom said, looking slightly uncomfortable. We'd like to host a community gathering, a kind of fresh start event. We'd like to invite you and your family. Not as an obligation, just as an olive branch. Let people meet you properly. Show that there are no hard feelings moving forward. Derek's first instinct was to say no. Why would he want to socialize with the HOA community after everything that had happened? But then he thought about Jerry, who'd been a genuine friend throughout this mess. He thought about the people who'd posted on the message board defending him. The ones who'd spoken up at the board meeting. They weren't all bad. They'd just had one very loud, very determined bad apple. Let me talk to my wife, Derek said. No promises, but I'll think about it. His wife was surprisingly open to the idea. We can't hide from them forever, she said. They're our neighbors, even if they're not in our HOA. And honestly, I'm tired of feeling like we're under siege. If they're trying to make peace, maybe we should meet them halfway. His daughter was less enthusiastic. Do I have to go? Those people ruined my birthday. Not those people, Derek corrected gently. One person ruined your birthday. Most of the neighbors are probably perfectly nice. Fine, but if anyone is weird to me, we're leaving. Deal. The community gathering was held on a Saturday afternoon in the HOA's common area, a large green space with picnic tables and a playground. Tom had kept it casual. Burgers, hot dogs, nothing fancy. About 40 residents showed up, which Tom said was a pretty good turnout for a voluntary event. Derek's family arrived fashionably late, which his wife insisted on. Never be the first people at a party, she said. Basic rule. The reception was warmer than Derek had expected. People came up to introduce themselves, apologize for the situation, express appreciation that Derek hadn't pursued more serious legal action. Jerry was there with his wife and kids, who immediately connected with Derek's daughter. That helped her relax. One older couple, married for over 40 years according to their enthusiastic introduction, pulled Derek aside. We owe you a particular apology, the wife said. We used your beach several times last summer. We had no idea it was private. We just thought it was part of the community amenities. You would have been completely within your rights to run us off. But you never did. That was kind. I never minded people using the beach, Derek said honestly. I just minded being told I couldn't use my own property. As the afternoon went on, Derek found himself actually enjoying the event. His daughter was playing volleyball with a group of kids her age. His wife was deep in conversation with some of the other mothers about local schools. His mother, who they'd brought along, was... Summer turned to fall and life started feeling normal again. Derek's daughter had made friends with several kids from the HOA community. They'd come over to use the beach sometimes, always politely asking permission first, which Derek appreciated. His wife had joined a book club with some of the HOA moms. Even Derek found himself waving to neighbors during his morning runs, sometimes stopping to chat. The property line markers were still there, of course. And the cameras. Those weren't going anywhere, but they'd become just part of the background now. A reasonable precaution, not a constant reminder of conflict. Then, about 6 weeks after Patricia had moved out, something strange happened. Derek was working from home on a Thursday afternoon when he got a motion alert from one of the beach cameras. He almost ignored it. Probably just a duck or something. But something made him check. Old habits, maybe. Or instinct. The camera feed showed a woman standing on his beach. Not Patricia. Someone younger, maybe in her early 30s. She wasn't doing anything threatening. Just standing there looking at the water. But she was clearly on his property, past all the markers. Derek saved the footage and headed down to the beach. The walk took about 2 minutes. When he got there, the woman was still standing in the same spot. She turned when she heard him approaching. I'm sorry, she said immediately, her voice shaking slightly. I know I shouldn't be here. I just needed to see it. See what? Derek kept his distance, trying to gauge if this was another problem about to happen. The woman laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. The famous beach that destroyed my mother's life. Derek's stomach dropped. You're Patricia's daughter, Vanessa. She stuck out her hand, then seemed to realize how weird that was and dropped it. Sorry, this is awkward. I'm making this weird. It's already weird, Derek said honestly. Why are you here? Vanessa looked back at the water. My mom won't talk about what happened. Not really. She moved 2 hours away. Changed her number. Won't talk to any of her old friends. I've been trying to piece together what actually went down, and everyone I talk to tells a slightly different version. I wanted to see this place for myself. Understand what she threw away everything for. Derek didn't know what to say. This wasn't a confrontation. This was something sadder, messier. Look, Vanessa continued. I know my mom was wrong. About the property, about how she handled everything. I know that. She hasn't admitted it, not out loud, but I know. I grew up with her. I know how she gets when she thinks she's right about something. She can't let it go. That's not my problem, Derek said, trying to keep his voice neutral. I know. God, I know. I'm not here to defend her or ask you to forgive her or anything like that. I just wanted to meet you. See if you were the villain she's made you out to be in her head, or if you're just some guy who bought a house. I'm just some guy who bought a house. Vanessa nodded slowly. That's what I figured. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you press charges? You had her on camera, trespassing, vandalism. You could have made her life even worse, but you didn't. Derek had asked himself that question a lot, because it wouldn't have fixed anything. She was already losing her home, her position on the board, her whole social circle. Putting her in jail or saddling her with a criminal record, that wouldn't have made me feel better. It would have just been revenge. That's remarkably mature of you. Vanessa pulled out her phone. Can I show you something? You can say no. Derek hesitated, then nodded. Vanessa pulled up a photo. It showed Patricia in what looked like a small apartment. She looked older than Derek remembered. Tired. The walls were bare. Moving boxes were still visible in the background. She's working retail now, Vanessa said quietly, at a discount store. She's 62. She was supposed to retire in a few years. Had a nice nest egg from selling her business years ago. But the legal fees, the costs of breaking her lease early, having to move quickly, it ate through a lot of her savings. She won't let me help her financially. Too proud. Derek felt that complicated pity again, mixed with frustration. I'm sorry she's struggling. I really am. But this was her choice. Every step of the way, she chose to escalate. She chose to harass me. She chose to double down instead of apologize. I know, Vanessa said. Trust me, I know. I've told her that. We barely speak now because every conversation turns into an argument about this. She's convinced herself that you somehow orchestrated everything, that you knew who she was, deliberately threw that party to provoke her, recorded everything to set her up. She's created this whole conspiracy in her head where she's the victim. That's not what happened, I know, but she can't accept that she was just wrong, that she made a mistake and then made it worse by refusing to admit it. That's not how her brain works. She's never been able to admit when she's wrong about something. It's been a problem her whole life. Derek thought about his own daughter, about how he was trying to raise her to own her mistakes, apologize when she was wrong, learn from her errors. It was basic stuff. Life lessons everyone needed to learn. But apparently some people never did. Why are you telling me all this? Derek asked. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of watching my mom destroy herself over pride. I'm tired of being caught in the middle. I'm tired of her refusing to take any responsibility. And I guess I needed to talk to someone who'd understand just how exhausting it is to love someone who refuses to admit they're human and make mistakes like everyone else. They stood in silence for a while, just watching the water. It was strange standing on his beach with the daughter of the woman who'd made his summer miserable, but it didn't feel hostile. It felt sad and complicated and very human. For what it's worth, Vanessa finally said, your property is beautiful. I understand why you fought for it. I wasn't fighting for the property, Derek said. I was fighting for the principle. She tried to take something that was mine and make me feel like I was wrong for defending it. That's not okay, no matter what the something is. Vanessa nodded. Can I ask one more favor? And you can absolutely say no. What? Can you not tell anyone I was here? The HOA people, I mean. My mom, she's paranoid enough already. If she knew I came here, tried to talk to you, she'd see it as betrayal. Things are bad enough between us. I won't tell anyone, Derek promised. But Vanessa, you might want to think about setting some boundaries with your mom. You can love her and still protect yourself from her drama. That's what my therapist says. Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Working on it. It's a process. She left after that, walking back through the property markers and disappearing into the HOA community. Derek stood on his beach for a while longer, thinking about the conversation. About how one person's inability to admit fault had rippled out to hurt not just themselves, but their family too. He texted his wife about what had happened. She called immediately. "That's so sad," she said. "The daughter seems nice." "Yeah, she does. But it's not our problem to fix, I know. But still, sad." Life continued its return to normal. Derek's daughter's birthday came around again, almost a full year after the original incident. This time they had the party at the beach without any interruptions. Tom from the HOA even stopped by with his kids, bringing a birthday card signed by several of the neighbors. It was a nice gesture. The cameras caught fewer and fewer interesting things as time went on, mostly just wildlife. Once they caught a couple of teenagers from the HOA community sneaking onto the beach late at night. Derek reviewed the footage, saw they weren't causing any trouble, just sitting on the dock talking, and decided to let it go. He remembered being a teenager. Sometimes you just needed a quiet place to exist. Winter came and the lake froze over. The beach was empty except for the occasional bird. Derek found himself missing the summer chaos, even the parts that had been stressful. At least it had been interesting. One evening in late February, Derek was scrolling through local news on his tablet when he saw a familiar name. Patricia Henderson. There was a small article about a community service award given to volunteers at a local food bank. Patricia's photo was included among a group of other volunteers. Derek showed the article to his wife. "Looks like she found a new community to be part of." His wife read over his shoulder. "Think she's still the same person?" "Probably. But maybe she learned something. Or maybe she just found a place where nobody knows her history. Which do you think?" Derek thought about it. About people and change, and whether someone who couldn't admit being wrong about a property line could ever really change. "I don't know. I hope she learned something. For her daughter's sake, if nothing else. But I'm not betting on it." Spring arrived, and with it came the return of life to the lake. Derek's family started using the beach again. His daughter brought friends over. His wife hosted a book club meeting on the deck. Everything was easy and peaceful in a way it hadn't been the previous summer. Then, on a warm Saturday in early May, Derek got a text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa, Patricia's daughter. I wanted you to know my mom started therapy. Real therapy, not just someone to vent to. It's early, but she's starting to talk about what happened, starting to understand her part in it. She's not ready to apologize yet. Maybe she never will be. But she's trying to grow. I thought you'd want to know. You don't need to respond to this on her